Hey everybody, what is going on? I am Maximus Rex and this is Big Baby Reviews. Today's Friday. Hope you've got a great weekend planned for yourselves. It is Todd McFarlane Day, so we're looking at the next issue of Spawn from his run in the early 90s on Image Comics. This is Spawn number 5, cover dated October 1992. Let me double check that. Yeah, 1992. Let's start by talking about this issue overall. Kind of iconic, right? You know, a little bit about this issue, and the child killer Billy Kincaid is the character that's featured here. Kind of continuing on with some of the themes that Tom McFarlane seemed to be interested in when he was working at Marvel still on the Spider-Man with no adjective series, the one that he was writing himself. There are a lot of similarities, I think, between some of those themes and some of the early issues of Spawn and the storytelling and the story themes that McFarlane was bringing into Spawn. He was trying to go as hardcore as he could at Marvel with it, as far as he could, and you know the whole story about how he quit about, you know, not being able to stab Juggernaut in the eye in the comic. So clearly there were limitations at Marvel of stuff that he couldn't do, that obviously when he started Spawn and Image, he could do whatever the heck he wanted. So we'll see some examples of that here. It's a pretty memorable issue, I think, from the Spawn run, from the early McFarlane stuff. We're still at peak McFarlane, I think. We're still getting a lot of new art, a lot of cartoony stuff. This is just a very good example of peak McFarlane at this time. So I think there's definitely some connective storytelling juices from the Spider-Man stuff, you know, with Perceptions, the Wolverine story with the child killers, and stuff that's going on in this issue here. So, you know, definitely Tom McFarlane, once again, using the comic as a mouthpiece for the kind of vile and disgusting stuff that he thinks, you know, characters like Spawn should be taken care of. You know, he's mentioned it somewhere, I forget what he was saying, but, you know, Batman, you know, brings them to justice, you know, and he definitely thinks that some characters just need to not be and exist anymore, basically. And that's kind of what he's talking about in this issue here, I think. Pretty cool, kind of, you know, your typical Spawn cover on top of a building. You know, this will become like the general composition of most Spawn covers, I think, overall. But, you know, with issue 5, this is still pretty fresh and new, and, you know, we love it and it looks cool, and McFarlane's kicking ass and doing some great artwork. Let's have a look inside. So starting off with a lot of text like this, maybe not so interesting, but I remember as a kid, it was, you know, you were learning about this character here, right, and his story. It's basically a lot of exposition. So it does get you through it in the first page and allows McFarlane to draw first page pretty quickly and move on to the rest of the story. But it does make sense. And thankfully, the rest of the comic is not so dialogue heavy. Let's look at the credits real quick. The story is called Justice. Story pencils and inks, Tom McFarlane. Letters and editor, Tom Orzechowski. Story consultant, Terry Fitzgerald. Colors, Steve Olaf, Ruben Root, and all the optics. Spawn, I think with issue 9, if I'm not mistaken, starts being printed on glossy paper, and I've often mentioned how I don't like when Image moves over to glossy paper. This is a good example of how, if you look at the page, and hopefully this shows up on the camera too, I think so, I can see it looks pretty close to what I'm seeing here, is the quality newsprint that the thicker newsprint, I'll say, that Image is originally using. It absorbs some of that black, right? So the black is not a clear, you know, dark black, like, you know, you've got the difference right here, right? Look at the difference between this glossy cover black and here, right? Same amount of whatever ink is being used. It's just the way the paper affects the ink is different, right? So I've mentioned before, I prefer this black where it gets absorbed a little bit, and it's just a lighter black. It's got a bit of gray in it, and it's just moodier. When we move over to the glossy paper with issue 9, I'll obviously point it out and you'll see the difference. But I definitely think that also added to the kind of look and mystique of those early Image comics and what we liked about it. And it gets lost a little bit when Spawn moves over to glossy paper, I do feel. I think they were all seeing it as a step up back then, but, you know, with hindsight, at least myself personally, I prefer the newsprint. So Billy Kincaid is a child killer, and he's being let out, and the cops aren't happy about it because they know his story, and he's a senator's son or a senator's nephew or something. So, you know, this is why he's getting out early. And he's thinking back while they're talking to, you know, his past deeds, you know. As a kid, you know, when I read this, I was 11 or 12, 11, 92. Yeah, I would have been 11. Like, this was just to see this was pretty dark. You know what I mean? And McFarlane is still holding back to a certain extent. He's not going to show you an actual, you know, dead child in the comic, but he gets pretty close. And again, some more great, you know, Tom McFarlane-isms. This is one of the rare instances where I think that open kind of silhouette thing that he does works, because whoever came in here figured out that that should be a fairly dark color, right? It's almost black, not quite. And I like this image because it helps differentiate these two guys on two different planes, just with that shift. And I say this is not black, it's whatever this color is, kind of a magenta. This is a really dark magenta, you know, closer to black. And McFarlane, for some reason has just abstracted the face like this, in the hands, just kind of contour, not even any facial features. It kind of works, he's just a faceless character, so why even draw his face? He does it back here as well too, right? Only Twitch has the glasses. Makes sense at this small scale. Here, you would think there'd be details, but it's interesting. I kind of like that. And yeah, like I said, Sam and Twitch not happy. Some interesting crop panels, the McFarlane verticals, if you want to call them that. The trope that McFarlane always does with the cigarette, which I copied, I gotta say 100%. Using the smoke of the cigarette as a layering tool, right? Always does it to great effect. I think it looks awesome. And then just a real close-up crop of him throwing the cigarette butt on the ground. Really well done. Again, his crops, always just enough information for us to understand what's going on. I mean, even this here, he's not giving us much, but right away we get that it's the alleyway and Spawn lying down here. So I would definitely still credit McFarlane with, picking different interesting angles is definitely a help to his storytelling. Once again, this is a pretty kind of domestic page, right? We're seeing Wanda with their daughter here with Cyan. So we get a down shot onto the house, a straight ahead kind of shot of her putting her to bed, and then kind of a POV down inside the crib with the baby shot here, and then the juxtaposition of Spawn and the baby Cyan in the same position. Just some good choices all on this, again, pretty pedestrian page, and those choices is what makes the page more interesting than it would be usually, right? All right, so Sam and Twitch just bitching about the whole situation here, right? So they basically decide to stake out Billy Kincaid's house, and so off cop hours to see what he's getting up to, basically. And then we get a whole creepy sequence here where he shows up with his ice cream truck as he usually did back in the day. Although she won't notice, today's little Shirley Johnson will be getting served by a new vendor. So you can see in the background here that whoever was the original driver of this ice cream truck is, if not dead, at least dying. I gotta assume that person's dead back there. Not too much detail on it, some blood on the face, but yeah. Again, McFarlane's going a little bit harder and creepier than even in Spider-Man. Though I gotta say, some of those depictions of the child's body and silhouette and perceptions, it was pretty gross and creepy. And then we get this famous sequence, right, where he's finger painting is what he calls it, right? And you can see that he's basically using some children's fingers and gluing them on the board here. So yeah, a little bit of morbid, it's about as far as it's going to go there. But I remember as a kid just being shocked by this, right? And then he's, you got to assume he's like scalped her and he's wearing her hair. Just, yeah, really creepy. And if, that's not enough, you get a little hint here, the dress kind of ripped up and bloody. So, I mean, visually he's going pretty far. He's suggesting a lot of stuff and a lot of kind of horrific images in her head, right? And then, of course, we're going to create kind of that, link between him and children and, of course, Wanda's child, Cyan, right? So right away, we move to, start to create that link in the story of Billy Kincaid and Cyan. And you get a hint here. You got Spawn once again in his, just like in the Savage Dragon appearance, his trench coat and hat look, which is not creepy at all. And, these women don't seem alarmed by a gentleman walking around in a trench coat and a hat, creepily. Anyways. Back in the alleyways at night. So what happens now, police officers driving through the alleyway. The angle of the car here, I think looks pretty cool. Definitely a kind of 1970s police car by this point. I don't think Todd's just choosing to draw the kind of cars he feels like drawing, not anything kind of realistic or close to the actual period that he's drawing in. This kind of close-up, though, is pretty cool, I gotta say. There's something I like. And I do like cars from this period, like those late 70s, early 80s cop cars and movies and stuff. So, I'd let it go. And that's just basically a story contrivance to get the word or the name Billy Kincaid into Spawn's ear, basically, right? So them buggers call it justice. Well, look at this. Coincidentally has the paper here. Running down an innocent man trying to find warm from the wind, and letting this Kincaid fellow go after killing babies. That ain't justice, that's nuts. Kincaid, free! And then we get, the effect of Spawn kind of fading into a memory, coming back to him, which I think works pretty well here. Already, keep forgetting 5 years have gone by, right? Since he was killed and came back from hell. Good, I won't lose out a second time. So what he's saying is, he's going to go after Kincaid. I don't know if there's a difference between comics shipped to Canada and the States back in the day, but for some reason I don't remember this ad being here, and kind of on usually Spawn doesn't have ads during the story, and then all of a sudden this is here. My original copy of Spawn number 5, I probably got rid of years and years ago, and I got this, at a comic store for a very cheap price. But I don't remember that ad. I don't remember this as well. So I don't know if there was a difference in the Canadian or the American versions or whatever that was, but yeah, there's something unfamiliar about all this here other than the actual pages. I remember reading these pages and nothing being in between. But yeah, so basically we're treated to a flashback, where Billy Kincaid had killed someone's kid back in the day, and he had asked Al Simmons to take care of him. And as he was getting there, the police had already taken him. And remembering that he had problems, with his boss here. The real kicker came later. My boss, Jason Wynn, told everyone involved to just drop the case, and they did, no questions asked, as it related to Kincaid. It was only one of the 1,000 reasons why Wynn and I fought, so I put it on the back burner, biding my time. Meanwhile, I had nothing to show for my efforts. No case, no killer, no money, because he didn't succeed in killing him, right? I like this kind of Alan Moore-ish transition from Al Simmons to Spawn here, basically the same pose. That's a clever thing to do. Again, a good angle here. Just a good example of, getting stuff across using the newspaper, but picking the right angle as well, I think, is what's cool, right? And just a good depiction of what basically is, just his foot and a bit of his ankle and stuff, but I think it looks cool. It's a great panel down there. And then, of course, we zoom in a bit, 7-year-old girl missing, right? We know what happened there. So we get a cool kind of nice vertical shot of Spawn here, using silhouettes to great effect here in the foreground. Shadow in Spawn's cape is really cool. So a lot of the dark stuff here in the foreground, really bringing it forward with the light kind of background there and layering. Great kind of head-on shot. Typical McFarlane buildings, real quick, almost all in profile with just slight perspectives on some of them. But works to great effect, looks awesome. I love water towers, so it's always fun to see in comics. So Sam and Twitch are staking out Billy Kincaid's place, right? And just real quick and kind of quietly, you can see Spawn there overhead. And just the inclusion of his hand here in the foreground of Billy Kincaid's house, right? That's a good shot. Spawn is kind of, like Dracula, enveloping the area. So Spawn looks inside. He's at it again. It doesn't matter who he takes. He doesn't care whose kid it is. It could be anyone's. Oh, Billy, that's a good one. So he's been thinking of his next victim, right? So the panel here is of the same shot of Cyan that we saw earlier. So he's, it's kind of Spawn's thinking that, he could be going after even Cyan, and then he's actually thinking about it, right? Even Wanda's kid, right? So cool shot of Kincaid here, very McFarlane-ish, right? So he realizes someone's in the house, or someone's around the house, and finally Spawn breaks in. Sam and Twitch realize that their friend is there, right? Sir, it looks like we have a visitor, a caped one, no less, right? And he sees him here in the background. And then we got the cool shot of Billy Kincaid having his first look of Spawn, probably his last look as well, right? Cops break in, but it's too late. And of course, we get the final panel that kind of made this comic a legend, right? Shot of Billy Kincaid in the cop's office, all chained up, with the message, boy screamed and girl screamed, so I made him scream and scream and scream. and using popsicles and popsicle sticks, right? So there you have it. One of the more memorable scenes in Spawn from, I think, the whole series, probably, at least from back in the 90s. Great work, too. Great silhouette all around. Most of this is just black ink, right? Not a lot of light. Works really well, though. Very effective. Pretty rare treat here. Pin up by Jason Pearson. Doing some Spawn. Don't think we got a lot of that. Interesting in his depiction of the Violator brothers. I guess we didn't have those yet, right, at this point. So Jason Pearson kind of, maybe Alan Moore saw this, and that's what put out the idea there might be more than one Violator. It's kind of a different design. Doesn't have the side horns. Good background, though. Good inking. I like all this. Very cool. Bit of spurt here with a paintbrush or a toothbrush works well too, and then probably use some white paint as well to do kind of the same effect there. Coloring is fairly subtle for 90s computer coloring, so good job on that one. Dinosaurs for Hire, always kind of intrigued, not quite sure if that was, no one really talks about it, so I guess it wasn't that memorable. I'd like to have a look at it at some point. This is a pretty cool comic here. Mike Mignola doing the Dracula movie adaptation, right? Just a little bit before Hellboy and stuff, but really Mike Mignola coming into his own with his style. And it makes total sense that, he would, I think he did, like he also participated and was some sort of consultant on the movie and some of the scenes, some of the look of the movie and the designs and stuff, but him doing the actual comic book is it just makes complete sense and works really well. I don't actually own it. I should definitely get a copy of that because it'd be nice to do a review. I really like Dracula, Bram Stoker's Dracula the movie. I think is one of my favorite movies. Very awesome. One of those movies I will rewatch and still enjoy. So it'd be nice to, I'll be on the lookout for the series and eventually do a review of it. Because I love the movie. I love Mike Mignola's art. And this is before he became a little more, somewhat looser with his style. And he's still kind of very illustrative, even though he's using a lot of shadow. And I really like this period of Mike Mignola. Probably my favorite Mike Mignola period. And, from back in the day, like I said, you didn't have the internet. I think this is the first time I ever saw Pit. And I was like, oh my God, what is this? Pit by Dale Keown, coming soon from Image, right? And I recognized him as the Incredible Hulk artist. Like I could see a definite connection here with this illustration here. Almost aesthetically connects more to the Incredible Hulk than Pit, right? He's still using screen tones and stuff. So he's still using a lot of the techniques technically that he's doing at Marvel, and also the coloring on this I feel is pretty basic and probably just not even computer colored, possibly just really early Pit, and just not there yet with the computer coloring, and still using a lot of the screen tones and stuff. But I love it. Very cool. I just remember it being that first time I saw Pit, and I was very excited. And the Frank Miller Sin City collection, the first, I think I actually bought this. Yeah, this is the first trade paperback of the first Sin City story featuring Marv, of course. All right, guys, there you have it. That is my review of Spawn number 5, kind of a legendary issue, at least as far as early Image Comics goes. You have thoughts, comments, concerns, let me know in the comments below. I'll respond. I respond to most of my subscribers who ask me questions. If you have questions for me, let me know as well. Thank you so much if you're subscribed and you're still watching. I really appreciate your support. Thank you for still being there. Those of you who are watching but are not subscribed, please do so below. It really takes only about a second. It helps the channel out. It helps get us out there to other like-minded people who are into comic books just like we are. So everyone out there, have a great weekend. Thank you so much. Have an awesome day.
Like, subscribe, like, subscribe.
King Comics presents Big Baby, Volume 1, Issues 1 to 13, 204 pages of story and art. King Comics also presents Star Crasher one-shot, 32 pages, cosmic sci-fi surrealist adventure. You can find these fine comics at KINGCOMICS.CA, at MaximusRex13 on Instagram, or on Facebook, MaxRex or Big Baby.